In an unexpected reunion, I discover that Mike's is actually my destined mate, while my current partner is a vampire. Chapter 60 to Mated Therapy. I sat frozen at my place. Even the smile on my face was frozen. I didn't even look at Vladimir. My eyes were locked to Kyle's. They just happened to be observing Kyle when Vladimir answered, and I became a statue. I couldn't even look away as Kyle's eyes snapped to mine. I couldn't give the same look of disbelief to Vladimir. I didn't even know what was going around. One wrong word from me and everything could be spoiled. Kyle didn't believe a word Vladimir said. He knew that Daniel was my mate. But why did Vladimir introduce me as his mate? He has already spoiled it. You found your mate? Jason asked me in surprise. That helped me remove my gaze from Kyle's dark eyes. Yes, I answered. I couldn't say anything more. I didn't even exactly know what was going around. It was better when I was in Moonstone Pack. At least I knew something there. But right now, at this moment, I'm completely off the hook, and it makes me feel insecure. The same feeling I had when I first landed in the Vampire Kingdom, and I don't like this feeling. Yeah, she is my second chance mate and I am hers. Vladimir injected. It was then I finally looked at him and smiled. I couldn't give him the glare I so badly wanted to. Oh, the sound of disappointment came from Kyle. He had taken his gaze of me and to Vladimir. His jaw was clenched and so were his fists. It was so weird. I felt bad as I shifted away from Vladimir. We were not sitting close to each other, but still it felt like I had done something wrong. The idea of being mated to Vladimir was simply nauseating. That's great, Jason added and looked worriedly at Kyle. I didn't miss that look. Neither did Vladimir. I was wondering what was going inside the vampire's head. He seemed so cool, marrying a smirk on his face. He stood up. It was a long journey. We'd like to take a rest. I stood up slowly, watching Kyle. He had gone rigid. I prayed to God to give him a mate soon before he loses himself in the abyss he is creating himself. By now, I had thought that he would have forgotten those feelings, but it looks like he hasn't. I don't get a good feeling from it. Jason will show you to your room, Cole finally said as he stood to. Still not looking at me, he extended his hand again. They shared some pleasantries. When you don't know what is going around, sometimes it's just better to be quiet. Jason led us through the hallways. You know my mate? Vladimir asked Jason. I looked at him. Yes, he replied. I trained her pack once. She had a mate there. Do you know him? Vladimir pressed. He was prying. I didn't like it but refrained from saying anything. I didn't want to raise any suspicions. I didn't know she had a mate there. Jason frowned and looked at me. Who was he? Someone. I didn't want to tell him about Daniel. That time, Shay was his mate. That would make me look really pathetic. I didn't want that. Besides, it would be great if my past remains in my past. Why was Vladimir inquiring of all these details? You don't know him. Jason might have sensed how uncomfortable I was talking about my mate. He dropped the topic and showed us our room. It was a single bedroom with a double bed. The room was beautiful, but I was only focusing on the only bed in the room. Great. I have to share a bed with Vladimir now. That is never going to happen. I won't let it happen. This is not good. I'm not going to be a part of it. If you need anything, you can inform me anytime. Jason smiled. Well, I really need an extra bed. No way am I going to share one with the awful vampire. No way. Just no way. Sure, Vladimir said. They talked a bit as I entered the room. I sat on the bed and watched the door as it closed behind Vladimir. He looked at me and smirked. It was not my plan. He informed me. Blood Devil planned it, and you are enjoying it. I raised an eyebrow. Enjoying watching your awkwardness with the alpha. Hell yeah. I scowled at him and then fell back on the bed, facing the ceiling. I can't place him in this place pretending to be your. I didn't even complete the sentence and a hand was already covering my mouth. It was then I noticed that his skin was not cold. It was mild warm, just like mine. Hovering over me, he glared hard. I raised my left hand to push him away and send him flying across the room, but he caught my hand and pressed it against the mattress. Only a second later, the door swung open to reveal Alpha Kyle standing on the doorway. I could have greeted him if Vladimir's hand was not on my face. But I didn't even realize how bad the scene looked like. With my face heating up in anger, I tried to sit up and only ended up shoving my face very close to Vladimir's. It might have appeared as if I was going to kiss him. I didn't even get a chance to shove away Vladimir and sit up. Cole quickly apologized under his breath and left, closing the door behind him. Vladimir didn't even look at the door. He was still staring at me. His green-colored eyes held so much amusement in them. He was clearly enjoying this. He was not going to make my stay in Blue Moon Pact easy. I pushed him off me with a force that he hit the wall just beside the door. A loud thump was heard. I expected him to bounce off and fall down, but he was quick to catch himself and stood on his 2 feet. He narrowed his eyes at me. "Your ear, Jack," I told him and flopped on the bed. I closed my eyes and tried to sleep. My main purpose was to cut him out. He was really a jerk. He did it on purpose. It made me so angry. How dare he? It was clear he used me to piss off Kyle. I didn't like the expression on Kyle's face when he saw me with Vladimir. He already thinks that Vladimir my mate. Now he has to see it also. I've had a history with heartbreak. It almost took my life. The worst experience of my life. I don't want a repeat of it with anyone. But I can't control every situation, especially those concerning Vladimir. He's way too strong and way too cunning. I wish I could just get him off my way somehow. Chapter 63 Unfaithful. We're here because we are invited, Vladimir told me in his cold, calm voice. What are we invited for? I'm adjusted back to my lifestyle in Vampire Kingdom. That includes asking Vladimir questions and not getting angry when he gives fake answer. That's something he always does and enjoys the irritation on my face. Why aren't you asked the lover boy? The way he said that made me narrow my eyes at him. There was a hint at playfulness in his voice, but I could still sense the tone of disdain in it. Shut up. I gritted out and faced away from him. It was better to sleep than talk to him. But there were unanswered questions. They concerned me a great deal. We are here searching for an heir. Every time Vladimir looks at me, I feel like he knows something, and it scares me to some point. What if he knows that I am the heir? This situation is completely messed up, and when my lies added to it, everything just turns out to be a bigger mess. I don't even know where to step. Everywhere. I can only sense thorns laid by me. This whole situation is created to mess up with my head. I may turn completely insane and go on a rampage. Even then, the first person I would kill will be Vladimir. In going out, I said, getting off the bed. Just when I opened the door, a man was standing there. He had a suitcase in his hands. Who did they belong to? He greeted me and Vladimir came from behind me. He let the man in. When we were back alone, I frowned at the suitcase. He opened one to reveal a number of dresses that didn't belong to me. What is this? But I had a hunch that those were my clothes. They might have been arranged for me because I came without any suitcase with me. But so did Vladimir. Now I think these are for us. They must be in the car. Clothes for you, he answered simply for the first time. He sorted out his clothes from the suitcase and arranged them in the closet. The perfection in his work never fails to surprise me. I wonder if he has some OCD. He was quick with his sleek movements. I was impressed. When he was done putting his clothes at their place, he looked at me. Are you going to stare me all day? That's rude. Take a picture and stare all you want, but I don't want to feel like you are raping me. He opened his big mouth and my mood soured again. Shut up. I muttered and decided to arrange my own clothes. He walked out of the door, leaving me to my own. Finally, I muttered at the side of closet that had my clothes. It's still hard to believe that I'm sharing a room with Vladimir. I'm mostly thinking of different ways not trying to kill him when he opens his big mouth. It took me 15 minutes to complete my task, while Vladimir had taken only 5 minutes. Looks like I really am a disgrace to vampires. But who cares? I'm that royal blood heir after all. And Blood Devil is after me. To my agent extraordinaire, Mythical, Hearts out thanks for your unfading patience, enthusiasm. That's a reality I have to face every day. Every living moment. But what am I going to do when Blood Devil actually finds out that I am the infamous heir? I decided to take a walk outside. My head was stuffed with too many thoughts. I needed to freshen up my mind. Locking the door behind me, I ventured around in the house. The place was new to me and I didn't know where to go. Soft murmurs of werewolves greeted my sensitive ears. I tried to block them out and walk freely. Then I finally stopped in front of a room that smelled strongly of Kyle. The room didn't expel much power. It was not an Alpha's room. It was a normal room, but Kyle was inside. "Oh God, Alpha," a female voice moaned and my eyes widened. The voices were hushed but still I could hear them. I jumped away from the door. What the hell? I walked away from there and found my way outside the pack house. Once outside, I took a deep breath. That was not Kyle's mate. But what was that? It surprised me. I was really shocked. Kyle was doing it with someone who was not his mate. I shouldn't be surprised, but I still am. Alphas are really different and they'd rather not talk about it. The chapter is closed now. I wondered where Vladimir must have gone to. Maybe for the search of heir. I can only pray to God that he doesn't find out anything about the heir. I shook my head. I shouldn't think about this stuff. My stress level will increase and my hair will start falling. No way. It didn't take long for me to enter the woods. I liked it better there, under the shadow of the trees. It was beautiful. The air was cool and calm. My muscles soon relaxed as I walked deeper into the woods. My mind was also feeling relaxed. To relax that I was feeling lightheaded. Sitting down under a tree, I leaned against it and looked at the leaves on the opposite tree. I sat there idly for a long time. My eyelids were dropping and before I knew, I lost my consciousness. The place was warmer. That was the first thing I noticed over my drowsiness. I snuggled close to the person who was radiating the warmth. I needed it. The forest was so cold. I opened my eyes slowly at the disturbance and looked into green eyes I loved so much. They were staring back at me. The granite features of Blood Devil's face greeted me. The image was blurry but I still made it out completely. I knew he was Blood Devil. He was staring at me. Softly. He softly patted my head and I closed my eyes again, falling into a deep sleep. "Are you stupid? Where did you go off to?" Vladimir asked me with barely held anger. "What?" I asked rudely and yawned. I was pissed off at him for waking me up so rudely. He pinched my arm so hard that I had a bruise there. If I was a human, the bruise would have lasted at least a week and it must have hurt like hell. You disappeared yesterday and when I came back, you were sleeping soundly on the bed. And what do I find here? Blood Devil, he said through gritted teeth. My eyes mention of the name. He was really here. He was going to kill me for not taking care of you. I felt better after hearing that part and smirked at me. Childish, I knew, but you won't attack me for that. You are enjoying this, aren't you? He narrowed his eyes at me. I don't even know why he bothers with you. You are just a stupid girl who, he stopped abruptly. His eyes were blazing with barely held anger. We are going to training center. Change your clothes and get out of the bed. They'll be waiting for you outside. With those words, he walked out of the door and slammed the door behind him. Chapter 64. The training ground was filled with about 50 male werewolves. There were about half the females as compared to males. The males stood with hundreds pounds of muscles. They were all burly guys. All of them looked intimidating. I've never seen something like that in Moonstone pack. That's the difference between the two packs. And this difference makes the Blue Moon pack so strong. Kyle was saying something to his werewolves. He was dressed in a casual tee and shorts like other boys. But after he finished his speech, he pulled off the tee over his head, leaving him completely shirtless. His boys did the same. That's a lot of testosterone in air. Some of the females stared at the males. The maids that were present, who were not the part of training, were most certainly staring at the boys. If you continue to stare at them like that, then they won't believe you are my mate. Vladimir teased me. His mood had improved a little. I was grateful for that. I liked a cool Vladimir more than a pissed-off Vladimir. You never know when he will kill you if he is angry. Then you drop your shirt and I will stare at you. I counted knowing he won't do that and he didn't. Are you admitting that you are attracted to me? He continued to tease me. I have too. To my agent extraordinaire, mythical. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. You're my mate, I replied sickly. He didn't get a chance to reply as the werewolves lunged at each other and started practicing their techniques. I was impressed by their speed and agility. Back in the Moonstone pack, no one was as good as them, except for Dave. After about an hour, I was sitting on a bench. At my side was Vladimir, who was playing with my hair. From far, we looked like a romantic couple, but the reality was from it. I don't think any of the guys over there is the heir, Vladimir said. But a couple of girls have caught my eye. I'm not surprised. He smiled at me. It was shut up and listen, or I will make you kind of smile. Be serious. Oh yeah. Don't do that. You sound like an owl when you giggle. He compared me to an owl. As I was saying, a couple of girls have caught my eye. See that girl over there? He pointed toward a tree. Surely there was a girl sitting under a tree. She was watching the training boys. I had noticed her too, but I think she was staring at Kyle. She has been looking at Kyle for a really long time. What's the deal with her? Something is different in her. I had a feeling that there was something really fishy. I had to talk to Kyle for it. And then there's another girl. She is training over there. She has been fighting continuously and she isn't even sweating. He pointed out that I looked at the said girl. I didn't notice her before. How did she even escape from my eyes? Maybe because I was too busy wondering about the other girl. The girl had long sandy blonde hair. She was not very tall, but fought like a champion. She was way too perfect. So we have the suspects. I concluded. Yes, he answered. And please shampoo your hair. They feel so rough. He stood up and held out his hand for me to take. I'm going to talk to Al for now and then we will go to our bedroom. To my agent extraordinaire, mythical. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. There is no way he's going to have a normal talk with me. Every time, he just finds a way to insult me. After he left, I sat there for a long time observing the trainees. They were really good. I wondered what my brother was doing. I haven't seen him in a week. I haven't even called him. What is Manny doing? She is pregnant. I'm going to be an aunt. I don't know how to react to that. A small baby. Looks like you are enjoying your time here. A deep voice said. I looked at Kyle standing in front of me. He was wearing a t-shirt and he didn't smell. He must have bathed. He looked good, with his arms crossed over chest. He was staring down at me with a teasing smirk on his face. What are you smiling at? He asked, sitting beside me. The spot that was previously occupied by Vladimir. Just something. He cocked his head to side. You won't tell me. It's nothing. I murmured and looked at the girl who was now staring at us. When she noticed that I was looking back at her, her eyes widened and she hastily looked away. Kyle, can I ask you something? Yes, you can ask me anything. Did you find your mate? All I received in answer was his silence. His face was completely expressionless when I looked at him. Surprise and resentment was clear in his eyes. No, I didn't. He answered and I nodded, not probing further. But you found another mate, he said after a few moments of silence. Yeah, I did. I answered sickly but made sure not to show the obvious truth in my voice. A cheer's lucky, Kyle said. He is. I goaded. He is the luckiest person in the world. Kyle was silent again. After I rejected Daniel, I never thought I would find someone as amazing as Vladimir. Ever since he has entered my life, everything has changed. I love him so much. I continued. That's something you can feel for your mate only. Your mate is the center of your universe. You will realize this, Kyle. When you will find your mate, you will realize that she is where your world belongs. If you try to fit in somewhere else, it will only make you feel lonely. But I can't make myself love someone. Kyle spoke. I knew that you wouldn't accept Daniel as your mate after what he did to you. and I was waiting for you to come to me. I wanted to be your world. I wanted to show you that you can always lean on me. But now you've got a mate who is a vampire. I tensed at his knowledge. So he knew Vladimir is a vampire. Does he also know that I am a vampire too? Does Vladimir knows that Kyle knows the truth, or was he the one to tell him that? I called Vladimir millions of names. I sat there not knowing what to say, so I stayed quiet. Even if you are a vampire, I still love you. I've never stopped loving you. Why can't you see it's era? His voice rose as he spoke. The girl again looked at us and frowned. She slowly stood up with a water bottle in her hand and walked in our direction. Are you sure about that? I asked calmly. Yes, I'm sure that I love you, Sarah. I've loved you and I will always love you. Only you. His voice sounded so desperate. What about your mate? I don't care about my mate. All I care about is you. I just want you, not her. Why don't you understand, Sarah? I can never love her the way I love you. I don't want my mate. A thud was heard that broke the tension between Kyle and me. Behind Kyle, the girl was standing with her mouth open. Her eyes were big and glossed over. Kyle's own eyes wide, and then he turned to look at her. At that moment, I was completely sure that she was his mate. Chapter 65, Destiny. She said and looked around. She blinked eyes several times and turned around. She bolted out of there. Kyle stood up abruptly but didn't go after her. His eyes followed her as she disappeared in the wood. She's your mate. I broke the silence that had settled. Kyle slowly turned to look at me. He lowered his head. Yes, she is. He admitted, knowing I had figured it out, that there was no hiding the fact. So you rejected her or something? My voice was cool. Yes, I did. He nodded. But I did it for you. I stood up and stepped towards him. That's what Daniel did to me. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben. Hartsaat thanks her unfailing patience, enthusiasm. He wanted Shay and rejected me. Just like you rejected your mate. I pursed my lips together. What's with alpha males and rejecting their mates? I asked rhetorically. Kyle stayed quiet. You're just like Daniel. You know. His eyes blazed when I said that. He had never liked Daniel. A comparison was a blow to his ego. He left his mate for Shay and you left your mate for Sarah. Even the names rhyme. There's a difference. You've nothing like Shay. You are better than her. That doesn't matter because you are exactly like Daniel. The man I hate. The man you hate. I narrowed my eyes at him. So tell me, Kyle, do you hate yourself too? Are you planning on rejecting her? I interrupted him. No, he denied. Daniel and I were never meant to be together. The way it happened was pitiful, but it made me what I am today. I only wish the same for your mate. She would get a new life. A new mate. I said the last part with extra stress. His whole body turned rigid. That was the reaction I was expecting from him. Werewolves are possessive. Alphas are the most possessive ones. Daniel was somehow an exception in that sector though. After what you said, I'm sure she is not going to return. Out there she will either find a mate or become a victim to an unmated horny wolf. What do you think will happen to her? I raised an eyebrow. Kyle's eyes turned black. His wolf had taken complete control over him. He growled at me before shifting into his midnight blue wolf. I hadn't expected that he would do that so soon. He was really quick with anger coursing in his veins, and he didn't like what I said might happen to his mate. I was pinned down by a large wolf over me and his sharp canines were bared to me. I think you should look for that girl. I shouted, but his wolf didn't hear me. His wolf must be really angry at me. And add to that fact I was the one stopping Kyle from being with his mate. Kyle's feelings for me to be precise, but his wolf didn't understand that. The wolf went for my neck, but I managed to wrestle away from it by my strength. I kicked it in the gut and the wolf flew a few feet away from me. He was ready to lunge at me again. If he did that again, I was seriously going to break his bones. But that didn't come to it. As Kyle jumped, he was pushed away by a body slamming to his side. That body belonged to Vladimir. He stood in front of me and made a growling sound in his throat that sounded exactly like a werewolf's. I didn't know how he managed to do that, but the sound surely made me shiver. Stay away from my mate. Vladimir commanded. The wolf's eyes flicked a dark brown color and he turned around and ran into the woods. The training area was engulfed in silence. The only moment I noticed was Jason heading towards in lightning speed. He was followed by other wolves. They all surrounded us in a circle. And from the expressions on their faces, they were not pleased with me. Or Vladimir. We have to lock you down in the dungeons. Jason said in a defensive tone. Destiny's key. Oh, I didn't know where I was going. I just ran with all my might. I had enough. Kai has already hurt me so much and he keeps on hurting me. When he returned from that Moonstone pack, I saw him for the first time after my 17th birthday. I didn't change into my wolf because I hadn't even touched my mate before. But that I finally met him. The moment I looked at him, I was lost. He was my mate. I knew that. And I was so happy with that. But when I approached him, my happiness didn't last long. He was training with his wolves and I had come to see my father. I was instantly drawn towards him, but he didn't show any response to me, which made me wonder if I was wrong. But after the training was over, he pulled me into the woods. The sparks that shot in my arm when his skin touched my skin was so ecstatic. But again, he seemed so unresponsive. You're my mate. I told him. He didn't say anything and continued to stare down at me with a hard look on his face. The coldness in his eyes made me shiver. I wondered what was wrong with him. Are you okay? I asked in concern, and indifferent and aerials ran in my head. Did he not want me as his mate? He was the alpha and several wolves wanted him. He had been with a couple of beautiful wolves in the past. But after a werewolf finds their mate, everything changes for them. I don't want you as my mate, he said harshly, and my fears were confirmed. My lower lip trembled and my wolf cried out in pain. I can't reject you, Destiny Lewis, as my mate. That was the worst day of my life. I had never really thought of my mate, but that didn't mean I didn't want a nice mate. My world had crumbled in front of my eyes, but I didn't want to give up. Carl was a good alpha and he had the potential to be a very good mate also. I had faith in him, so I decided to stay around him and took job as pack housemaid. It worked fine. I was near Kyle, but my happiness didn't last long. Kyle ignored me. I had accepted that. Maybe the idea of someone else in his life scared him. He had always led the pack alone. His parents were killed when he was young. He had his own demons. He never let me in, but he did let those girls inside his room, in his bed. And it hurt a lot. To hear them doing those things. To wash those sheets. To go inside that room. To watch those girls talking about how good he is. It all hurt a lot. How could he do that to me? I don't know how I coped it all. But still I did. I wanted him to see me as his mate. And today he claims that he doesn't want me. He loves that new girl. His words pierce straight through my heart. I don't care about my mate. All I care about is you. I just want you, not her. Why don't you understand, Sarah? I can never love her the way I love you. I don't want my mate. His words were ringing in my head over and over again. I didn't want to hear them, but those voices won't just stop. I wanted to go away, to numb the pain. It was all too much. So much for my poor heart. I was so lost in my thoughts that I didn't notice the movement from my side. A huge grey wolf lunged at me. Chapter 66, Sos Errors P. Over, you're so such a jerk. I could call you many names, but I fear God. I gave Vladimir a look of pure disgust. What? It was not my fault that you had bewitched Kyle. He shrugged innocently. But you made him jealous by sitting near me. You sent him to me. You were the one who made me think about his mate. That's why you talked to me about her, didn't you? I pointed my finger at him. You knew if you probed the topic I would be tempted to talk about it to Kyle. Then you sent him to me. And, of course, I asked Kyle about his mate. He lunged at me and now I'm in this dungeon because you had to play your stupid mind games. He leaned against the wall of his cell while I was sitting cross-legged in my cell. We were given adjacent cells. That's good because I might have killed him if we're put together in one cell. It's impressive that you surmised all of this. I glared at him. And what did that achieve? Entertainment. He raised an eyebrow and I gave him a dirty look. He rolled his eyes. Come on. You have to admit, it was a fun part for me. Especially your expressions when Wolfkyle jumped at you. I'm glad you were entertained. He didn't say anything after that. I, on the other hand, was pondering why he did that. Knowing Vladimir, he doesn't do anything without any purpose. It was something that was worth us spending some time in these dirty and dark dungeons. He talked about the girls, one was Kyle's mate and another was that trainee. I have a hunch that whatever he did was for that girl. Whatever the result came out is unknown to me, but there was something amiss. So I started. Was this for that girl? I asked, looking at him. He didn't turn his face to me. His eyes were closed, and he was completely relaxed. I have a feeling that she is not what she shows us. What do you mean? I asked in bewilderment. Think's ear, think. She had exactly same green eyes at mine and yours. It's bright and dark at the same time. The color is very unique. There is only person besides us who has those eyes. I know you have figured this out, but don't tell this to whole world now. We are in dungeons and walls have ears. He told me. I had opened my mouth today, Blood Devil, but closed it at his words. So he thinks that the girl is Blood Devil. Can Blood Devil do something like that? I had never seen it, but for some reason, I still think that he can. Have I seen it or not? Maybe he had changed into someone else and passed. Like, I don't know. Why am I even thinking of it? I should think about Kyle's mate. That girl, she was really hurt by his words. It was clearly written on her face. But I knew Kyle was not Daniel. I knew he wouldn't just leave his mate. He needed one push. His wolf already wanted her, and now his human form also feels protective of her. Maybe he will need a bit more convincing, but I know he will do it. Someone is coming. Vladimir whispered lowly. I sat up quickly as footsteps approached. The scent was very familiar. It was mingled scent of both Blue Moon and Moonstone pack. I knew only one person who could have that scent. I stood near the iron bars coated with silver. It didn't hurt as it happens with werewolves or vampires. It was normal as it is for humans. Maybe that's because I'm the heir, but I'm never going to let anyone know about it. Sierra Winters. Delilah greeted me. Beside her, Will, her mate, was standing. When we had come to Moonstone pack, he found out that Delilah was his mate. She was Shear's best friend, so I didn't like her much. She was rude to me in high school. But that's in past now. Hello, Delilah. I smiled at her. Hi, Will. He smiled at me. He was a good friend of mine back then, but I don't know what he thinks of me now. Especially because I am standing inside a cell. You finally got another mate. How she raised an eyebrow and looked at Vladimir. The look on her face said that she liked what she saw. I rolled my eyes at that. She is not the first werewolf to look at Vladimir with appreciation. And I can say he's better than Aniel. A growl erupted from Will's throat. Delilah smiled and rolled her eyes. The action was genuine. Maybe her separation from Shay had changed her. But not better than you, darling, she told Will. Anyways, I was told that you were put here in the dungeons and I came to see you. We are just back from our honeymoon. Good for you. To my agent extraordinaire, Mylan Nilben. Hearts out saints, her unsailing patience, enthusiasm. Why are you saying it like that? She smirked. Did you go for honeymoon with your mate? There is no mark on your neck. Maybe you haven't. But if you ask me, I can put you in his cell and you both can have your honeymoon here. I tried not to gag on her words. It was impossibly hard to keep my expressions cool as those nauseating words came out of her mouth. Delilah was said in a warning tone. I was just kidding. She defended herself. Anyways, I'm going to visit my parents and thought of giving you one last visit before I leave. I'll see you in a few months. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. And you'll say hi to Daniel for you. And, Delilah, let's go. We are already late. We interrupted her and she sighed. I was only saying goodbye. So goodbye, Sierra and her mate, she said and walked away. Will stayed behind. When she was out of hearing distance, Will looked at me. "You know how she is," he said sheepishly. "I understand." I waved my hand. "And I also apologize for keep you here. But we can't let you go until Kyle returns. This place is not that bad." He chuckled. "I have to go now. Goodbye, Sira, and take care of yourself, but I know you don't do that, so Mr. Vladimir. Please take care of her. She is the best. You're lucky you got her as your mate," he told Vladimir, who gave a fake smile to Will as he walked away. I stood in silence waiting for Vladimir's insult. He was not going to say quiet. I've been with him long enough to know that he won't miss a chance to show me down. Delighted just provided the perfect opportunity to him. Honeymoon with Sira. He wondered out loudly and then scoffed. "As if I would ever touch her," he said, as if the idea disgusted me. "The feeling is mutual." I spat at him and went back to my previous spot before Delilah had come. "I will never like to be touched by you." He opened his mouth to say something but was stopped by a commotion. I looked at Vladimir to see his reaction. He was looking in the direction of noise. The shadows appeared in the dimly lit corridor. There was a hustle and then 2 guards came in first. A strong scent hit me. My eyes widened. Is this the 2 guards were holding arms of a body? Other 2 guards were holding the legs. To my agent extraordinaire, mythical, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Another werewolf entered the room. He was wearing only shorts. His mouth was set in a hard line. I looked at the breathing unconscious werewolf, wondering what he had done. He was carried to the cell opposite to Vladimir and dropped unceremoniously. I and Vladimir both were standing near the bars watching the scene. Without a single glance at us, the guards and that werewolf left. I looked at the person completely horrified as he stirred slightly. Slowly, he opened his eyes and blinked them several times to adjust with the light. He groaned and rolled over, shoving his naked butt in the air. My eyes widened even further as I noticed for the first time that he was completely naked. I looked away immediately and my gaze landed on Vladimir, who was observing the new prisoner with squinted eyes. To my agent extraordinaire, mythical, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm, Vladimir said calmly. Isn't he your mate? Chapter 67 just great. Can you shut your mouth, for once? Vladimir said in an annoyed tone. You are the one who has shut your mouth. I scolded him. Who asked you to tell him that you're my mate? I thought it would be fun to see your reaction. I didn't know you had this crazy creature as your mate. This is getting really annoying now. That's what you get for trying to be smart. Vladimir ignored me. Where's Kyle anyways? We've been locked in here for a day now. I don't like to be treated like this. What are you doing here? I asked Daniel, still not looking in his direction. I've never seen a naked man be fun too. You are mine, sir. Mine only. Oh, yes, not going to talk about anything else. Vladimir muttered. This is all your fault. I glared at him. I didn't know your mate was crazy, he said, pointing at Daniel, who was still screaming about how I was his. I didn't get any chance to respond as the commotion from outside grabbed my attention. I looked at the source of noise. A couple of guards came down. They were followed by a strong scent which I knew belonged to Jason. As he came inside, he smiled at me and asked the guards to open the doors. I and Vladimir were let outside, but Daniel was still in his cell. He didn't stop screaming. You're mine. Only mine. To my agent extraordinaire, mythical, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Jason gave Daniel a confused look. Took you long enough, Vladimir said grudgingly. Sorry, Mr. Summers. We were searching for then Alpha. He had gone missing after his fight with your mate. Then we found this werewolf in the forest, he said, pointing at Daniel. He was injured and poisoned. The scratches tell us that he was in a fight with Alpha. Now we have found the Alpha and he ordered us to let you out. Jason explained and then apologized for putting us in dungeons. It's all right, Jason. To my agent extraordinaire, mythical, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. If I was at his place, I could have done the same thing. But why is Daniel acting like this? I asked, pointing my thumb in Daniel's direction. He was poisoned by a herb that makes a werewolf lose control of his senses for 24 hours. He will be fine by tomorrow. Jason answered and then watched me curiously. His gaze flickered to Daniel and then back to me. Something flashed in his eyes. I could feel the gears in his head turning. Yes, he was my mate. I confirmed his suspicions. Oh, was all he said. Let's go, darling, Vladimir said to me while looking at Daniel. Daniel went crazy inside the cell. He screamed at the top of his lungs. I glared at floor as we were led outside of the dungeons. Vladimir was looking around with concentrated eyes. He was memorizing every part of the dungeons really well. Have you heard about herbs like that? Vladimir asked. They are called Heir EP9. I answered, not explaining anything more. Great. Even she knows this. He grumbled, making me glare at him. And he doesn't know this. I shot back. I'm not a werewolf. He defended himself. I scoffed and didn't say anything back in return. We reached Kyle's room. This time, there was another scent mingled with Kyle's scent. It made me smile. Finally, the alpha has got his brain back because now he has given his heart to the right person. Inside the office, Kyle was sitting on his chair while his mate was sitting on the couch. I smiled at her when I saw her. She also smiled back at me. Her smile was more of confusion. It was completely forced. I was not surprised. Neither didn't I take it as a rude act. That came out of her naturally. A naturally forced smile. Hello, summers and winters. Kyle greeted us. I chuckled at his greeting words. Even his mate sitting on the couch smiled at that. Hi, Kyle. To my agent extraordinaire, Mythical Nilben. Hearts out thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Looks like you're finally with your mate. He lowered his head and nodded. I am. I'm sorry for what I did in the past. You didn't do anything. To my agent extraordinaire, Mythical Nilben. Hearts out thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. He only shook his head. You have no idea what I have done. I frowned at his words. The ominous tone in his voice made me think that he had really screwed up something big. What have you done, Kyle? I asked him. I looked between Vladimir and me. I looked at Vladimir. His face was void of any expressions. I called Daniel here. I raised an eyebrow. To my agent extraordinaire, Mythical Nilben. Hearts out thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I wanted to separate you from your mate, so I called Daniel and told him that you were here. I stayed silent to let him speak. He came to my territory in search of you, but came across my mate. But before that he had somehow consumed Orofanus and went crazy. He attacked Destiny, but I stopped him. He explained. So Daniel is here because of you. I'm really sorry for what I did. But I've promised to give him my protection. I can't break my promise, so he is going to live here for a few weeks. Just great. Doesn't he have a pack to look after? He has given that position to his beta. After losing his mate, Daniel gave up the position of alpha until he gets his Luna back, but from current situation, it appears like H is never going to get his Luna back. Cole smirked teasingly at me. How things have turned out to be like this. Chapter 68. Old Mate. You look beautiful, Daniel told me as I was sitting on the dining table along with everyone. I frowned at no one in particular. It's not every day that I get compliments from someone. It feels strange getting them from Daniel now. Suddenly, he's like someone else for me. Achia's no longer my mate and I don't feel any connection to him. Why, thank you, I said in a low voice, and he smiled at me. After spending a night in the dungeons, he was acting more humanly. The craziness of his wolf had disappeared. Blue eyes stared at me with affection. It was completely weird getting those looks from him. I wanted to blindfold him. Vladimir didn't say anything to Daniel. He was enjoying my condition. I wanted to slap him in the face. To my agent extraordinaire, Mythical Nilben. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I wanted to slap Kyle first. He had apologized for calling Daniel, but that didn't change the fact that he had actually called trouble for me. Kyle apologized to us in front of everyone for putting us in dungeons. Vladimir let that slide. He had a more important matter in hand, and that was to find the heir of royal blood. He was way too serious of his task, and it was not good news to me. After breakfast, Vladimir and others left for training while I was still in the pack house. I went to the library and decided to read a book. While I was walking around the place, I saw a figure moving. Frowning, I followed the scent. It was someone from Kyle's pack. I moved around the shelf and came face to face with Kyle's mate, Destiny. Her eyes widened when she noticed that I had caught her. Why was she following me? I see her. She laughed nervously. What are you doing here? I assessed her with pointed eyes. I came here to read a book. What are you doing here? Just like you. To read a book. She lied smoothly. I wondered what was going inside her head. Her eyes were shifting in nervousness and her left hand was shaking at her side. Her tense posture screamed that she was hiding something. Why were you following me? I asked straight out and her eyes widened. What? I was not following you. He denied vehemently. I don't believe you. But who am I to accuse you? You are, to my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilban. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Alpha's mate. I told her with cold voice. She was hiding things from me and I didn't like it. And you are his lover, she muttered. If I was not a vampire, I wouldn't have been able to hear her. The shocking words left her mouth, taking me off guard momentarily. I shouldn't be surprised, but still. I don't like to be called anyone's lover. I'm not his lover. I never was. I have my own mate. I made clear. But he loves you. She looked at me with sad eyes, tears brimming in them. He loves you. Even though he has accepted me as his mate, he still loves you. Then make him love you. It won't be difficult considering you are his mate. You don't look like an airhead to me, so use your brain. He will come to love you eventually. She blinked her teary eyes at me and swept away the tears that had rolled down her cheeks. I will, she said with determination. I will make him love me. That's the spirit of a Luna. I have to read a book now. Stop following me and instead follow your mate. Thank you. A smile lit up on her face and she nodded. And I'm sorry. She apologized. I forgave her and she left. Kyle's mate was cute. He had broken her so much with his previous actions that she didn't believe she could get him. All she needed was a little push. I searched around the library for a book. It was huge and I loved moving around. It's been a long time since I've last read a book. That might be around the time when I was still in high school. Crushing on Daniel. But that's past. Now I've moved on. Daniel is a history who tries to become my present also. But my feelings for him are surely historical. I picked a book and started reading it. It was some ancient story about how werewolves come to find their mates. I had only read a couple of pages when another scent hit me. It was Daniel. I was sitting on the chair when two hands we placed on my eyes. It felt so weird and I was uncomfortable. But the thing was, is he stupid? Can't he understand that I don't want to be with him? Over the time, it has got annoying. Daniel, what are you doing? I asked, calmly closing the book. He let go of my face but then trailed his index finger along my cheek. Enjoying a little time with my mate. He whispered in my ear and then kissed just below it. My body shuddered in disgust. I could feel his smirk against my skin. This is getting out of hand now. I abruptly stood up from the chair and glared at him. He only smirked at me. What the hell are you doing? Stay away from me, Daniel. And you are not my mate. My mate is Vladimir. I told him through gritted teeth. How dare he touch me? My mate is Vladimir. That leaves a bitter taste in my mouth. His smirk fell and he narrowed his eyes at me, taking a few steps towards me. He stopped only when there was distance of a feet between us. I refused to back down and he refused to stop. I placed my hand on his chest to stop him from moving forward. He shivered at the touch. I felt confused. Did he still feel the bond? The rejection should have worked, but looks like it didn't. Not in his case. Daniel, leave. I gritted out. But I don't want to. If I leave this place, I will do it with you, he said huskily, and then suddenly pushed me to bookshelf. I could have stopped him, but just then I heard a movement that caught my attention of him. His body was pressed against mine and I didn't like it at all. But if I push him away now, then he will come back. There needs to be other way. Be quick. I weakly tried to push Daniel away, but his hands caught my wrist and pinned them above my head. Leave me. Just then the door of the library burst open and Vladimir walked in. He took in the scene and looked surprised when he caught sight of me struggling in Daniel's arm. Vladimir, help. On hearing Vladimir's name, Daniel stepped away from me and growled while my so-called mate looked confused. Then he raised his eyebrows at me, as if saying, "What did you do this time?" Daniel's wolf was in control. The next moment, he was shifting into his wolf and attacking Vladimir. Vladimir was quick enough to get out of his way. Daniel slipped and slammed against the wall with a loud thud. I heard several footsteps heading in our direction. The help was coming. Daniel's wolf stood up in its paws and growled at Vladimir, flashing razor-sharp teeth dripping with saliva. Something was wrong with the picture. I knew that. Do werewolves salivate this much? It's like a wolf having rabies. There was another thing I noticed. The color of Daniel's eyes. There was a red tint to them. He jumped on Vladimir again, who rolled out of his way. Daniel smashed against a shelf of books and it fell. The sound was so loud that my ears were ringing. Just then, the guard burst through the door. When they noticed that a wolf was in the library, an insane wolf, they jumped into action and transformed into their wolf forms. All of them surrounded Daniel and then attacked him. I was watching from sidelines. Vladimir had disappeared from the scene. A few seconds later, Kyle entered. He looked concerned. Destiny entered behind him. What happened here? He asked as he noticed the condition of his beautiful library. This werewolf attacked the lady. The guard told Kyle as he pointed it at me. Chapter 16 Scene Secrets. That was yesterday when Daniel had attacked me unexpectedly. Vladimir pretended to be oblivious to all of this. He didn't show any interest in Daniel. Rather, Vladimir was ignorant of Daniel's presence. He evaded every chance that would land him within 5 feet distance from Daniel. That included me, because Daniel was following me around like a lost puppy. It drove me crazy, but I didn't know how to shake him off. Daniel's eyes had turned red yesterday. I wonder how that was possible. Enthusiasm, in the past. I might have read something about that bite, but I was not quite sure. I needed to look into the old books again to find something about it. For that I had to contact Moonstone Pack. "Hello, Dave," I murmured into the phone. "To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilban. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." His shocked voice asked me. I could imagine his wide eyes and open mouth. "Yeah. You called. You finally called after 3 weeks." He asked in half-mocking tone. I rolled my eyes. "Yeah, I did. Let me guess. You need something. You are right. That's so rude of you, Sarah. You could have at least lied and said you missed your only brother. But no, you have to hurt my feelings. Stop being so dramatic, brother. You should have been born as a girl." "What? No, why? You act like a girl." "I don't. If I did, Manny won't be pregnant," he protested. I chuckled at his words. "You're so gross, Dave. So how's your vampire?" He asked me and I froze for a moment. Vampire. Of course Dave knows this. What I had left. Alpha Wayne told Daniel about that also. But right now, Daniel is acting as if he doesn't know that I'm a vampire. "Hello. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilban. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." "Are you there?" Dave's voice pulled me out of my thoughts. Gosh, how could I have been so careless? There's definitely something wrong with Daniel. Besides, he had red eyes yesterday. That makes me wonder if he really is Daniel or not. "Dave, where is Daniel?" "Daniel, that jerk. He left after a week after you did. Didn't say anything and just disappeared. Alpha Wayne had to give me the position of Alpha because there were no traces of him," he explained. Why are you asking about him? I just, do you know about Heir EP9? If it mixes with werewolf blood, then he goes crazy and starts attacking everyone around him. Why are you asking about it? Dave, please, do one thing for me. Find about all the medicines and drugs that are made by using erupts. If necessary, search in the books of black magic also. I need to find about it. Why? Do it as soon as possible. I need to go right now. I hung up and sat on the bed. I've been too careless in past few days. The fear of being caught by Blood Devil weighed too much on me that I have forgotten to use my brain. I have to do something. I have to do something soon and find out what exactly happened to Daniel. After that I will focus on steering away Vladimir from finding out the heir. Hello, Sierra. Daniel greeted me while I was taking a stroll in the garden. I mentally groaned in annoyance. Hi, I muttered grudgingly under my breath. What are you doing outside? He asked me. Counting stars. I answered sarcastically. But it's still afternoon. Yeah. Did you hit your head or something and you are seeing stars now? He asked with a suggestive tone that made me frown. Come here. I will make it good for you. He pulled at my arm so that I was pressed against him and caressed my face. I felt uncomfortable under his touch. It didn't feel like Daniel at all. It felt all too wrong, as if something very evil was looming over me, ready to pounce at any time. I squirmed in his grip, but he held me tight to him. My eyes widened in surprise. How had he grown so strong? I couldn't even push him away. He was never this strong before. What had suddenly changed him? He smelt like Daniel. He looked like Daniel. But he didn't behave like Daniel at all. What was up with him? Leave me alone. I gritted out. But I don't want to leave you alone. What I want is a kiss. His eyes turned red again when he said that. Then his face was leaning in. What the hell is going on here? A booming voice interrupted. It was Kyle. Daniel pulled away from me, his eyes back to their blue color. Beside Kyle, Vladimir was standing with a frown. I glared at him. Sorry, Kyle. I was just talking to my mate. Daniel said, raising his hands up. Didn't look like talking to me. Kyle glared at Daniel. If you do that again, I will be throwing you out of here. Daniel only smirked and apologized once again before leaving. I really need to talk to Dave. The more time I spend with Daniel, the more I see that he is not the same Daniel I knew. He is a different person. Around everyone. He acts like Daniel, but when he is alone with me, he shows his all-new sadistic side that confuses and even scares me. Are you all right, Sir? Kyle asked me as he came to my side. Concern was evident in his voice. I nodded my head and then looked at Vladimir, who was staring in the direction in which Daniel went. In going to my room, I muttered and walked past Vladimir to the room given to us. That man is going to be such a problem to me. This way, it won't take everyone long to realize that we are not mates. Why are you looking at me like that? You're making me feel uncomfortable. Vladimir asked as I sat on the bed and glaring him removing his clothes. Don't get it wrong. My eyes were only on his face. You are a crappy mate, I stated flatly. I've got a crappy mate, he retorted. I ignored his comment. Werewolves are possessive creatures. They don't like it when any other male wolf interacts with their mate. But you don't say even a single word as Daniel flirts openly with me. Jealousy and possessiveness are vital signs of a werewolf male. Firstly, you look so pale. Secondly, you can't transform into wolf form. Thirdly, you don't act like a possessive werewolf. You don't have any werewolf quality in you. I moved in front of him. This way your cover will be blown up and their werewolves will kill you. I will be killed too, I whispered through gritted teeth in front of his face. I can't be killed, Vladimir said. His breath and my face, and I stepped back. I know, but revealing your identity will cause a big problem. That won't happen, he said with conviction. His eyes were blank and I didn't know what he was thinking. We were staring at each other for a couple of minutes until my phone rang. I pulled the phone out of my pocket. It was Dave. Vladimir scrutinized my phone with narrowed eyes. I answered the call. Hey, Sierra Winters. Mania's voice came from the phone. She must have shouted into it because the sound was so loud. I pulled the phone away from my ear and winced. That was unexpected. Vladimir raised an eyebrow at me. His sensitive ears had everything Manny was saying. Most of it was her babbling and calling me a horrible friend for not contacting her soon. After that she started crying. I could hear Dave trying to soothe her. Pregnant she, Wolf is dynamite. She just proved it. I walked out of the room and Vladimir didn't bother to follow me. I went to the garden. It was night time. Jason saw me from afar and waved his hand. I waved back and pointed to my phone indicating I was talking on it. He nodded his head and then started conversing with boys surrounding him. Is she all right now? I asked Dave, who said she had fallen asleep. She had called to scold me then. I found out about the red eyes you were talking about. There are various medicines that use ROPHA. What surprised me the most was its use in black magic. You should hear this one. What is it? ROPHA used with some secret herb. Once injected in a werewolf. That werewolf can be controlled by someone who is specialized in telepathy. This is a top-secret technique and was developed several centuries ago by a vampire called Blood Devil. My heart stopped momentarily hearing that name from Dave. He used to control werewolves with it and use them to find something. I was silent. This is related to Blood Devil. That means Daniel is being controlled by Blood Devil. He must have specialized in telepathy. I don't find that part hard to believe. And to find something, could it be he was trying to find the heir? And Sarah, you won't believe. The person who gave me this information about black magic is Alpha Wayne. That man is really knowledgeable. Chapter 70 Ex-Mate vs. Mate. Life turns miserable when there are more questions than answers. I needed to know how exactly the poison used on Daniel works. He is controlled by someone, but it doesn't always appear as if he is always in that condition. There is a greater possibility that Blood Devil is involved in this somehow. Why would he even bother with Daniel to begin with? And there is one more suspect, Kyle. I believe he is also involved. He was the one who had told Daniel about my whereabouts, and after that Daniel fell into this mess. Besides, Kyle knows that we are vampires. That means Blood Devil also knows that Kyle is informed about this. There is a possibility that it was actually Blood Devil who had concocted this plan. A part of me refuses to believe, but a big part of me still believes. I think I might like Blood Devil, but I've already been deceived by Daniel once. And Kyle, who claimed that he liked me also, did the same in some way. When it comes to love, I've started becoming wary now. It is a strong feeling that can be manipulated by the wrong person to produce very dear-tasting results. Right now I have to focus on Daniel. But even before that, I have to find out what Alpha Wayne knows about Blood Devil, because it seems he knows way too much. The question is how I will even get out of this place. If I go to Moonstone Pack, Vladimir will become suspicious. I can come with an excuse though. Manny's pregnancy will work in my favor. There was a knock at the door and I was pulled out of my thoughts. I opened the door and found him there. He had an apologetic look on his face. I only stared at him, waiting for him to speak. Hi, Sarah. He greeted hesitantly, yes. I kept my voice devoid of any emotions. From the looks of it, he was really confused. His eyes were shifting in discomfort and confusion. He scratched the back of his head. I am sorry. He apologized. I didn't know what got over me in the garden. It's all right, Daniel. I interrupted him. You are my mate. It was normal coming out of you. He blinked his eyes in confusion. To my agent extraordinaire, Mylin Nilbay. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. You forgive me. He was surprised, as if he couldn't believe that. Yes, I smiled at him. Come inside. I moved aside, letting him inside. He sat on the bed while I leaned against the wall opposite to him. His posture was slack, lacked his usual arrogance. He looked defeated. Thank you so much, Sarah. You don't know how much that means to me. I love you so much. You mean the world to me. I will never force myself on you like that. I don't even know. He ran his hands through his hair. I only stared at him for a couple of seconds. He sounded really genuine. I love you to Daniel. I told him with a small smile. He stared at me with wide eyes when he heard those words. The disbelief on his face almost made me smile. What? I love you, Daniel, I repeated. No matter what. You are my first mate. My feelings for you are always present even if I try to deny that. He stood and walked towards me. He stopped when he was only a couple of feet away from me, staring intensely into my eyes. He leaned forward and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. I looked away from him shyly. Then don't deny it, he murmured, closing the distance between us. Before he could kiss me, I pushed him away from me. His face flashed with a look of hurt. I tried not to reach out for him and looked at the floor. I can't. In with Vladimir. I gritted those words out. Then leave him, he stated as a matter of fact. I glared at him. I can't just leave him. He is my mate. I am your mate. Daniel grew angry. He's just a rebound. He can't be your mate. I am. I know, but I trailed off. I will kill him, he said suddenly. I was surprised by his suggestion. That was so easy. If he is standing in my way of having you, then I will kill him. Daniel? I gasped, staring at me wide eyes. He leaned forward to kiss me, but I turned my face away so that his kiss landed on my cheek. He sighed in disappointment and stepped away from me. I didn't look at him. He left the room without saying any other word. Now I have to see. Will Daniel really kill Vladimir or not? This will be exciting. How long should I wait before and cold outside? I stood near the window and gazed at the garden. It was beautiful, so opposite of my roller coaster life. I came up with new startling conclusions every now and then. Right now I'm wondering how fiercely Vladimir will fight Daniel. Miss Summer. There was a knock at the door. Daniel sure took his time, yes? I asked, opening the door. A man with light brown hair was standing shirtless in front of me. His body was covered in sheen of sweat. He must have been training when he was interrupted. Mr. Summers and Mr. Osborne are fighting in the training center, he told him while pounding. My eyes widened. Oh my God. I need to stop them. Please, come this way. He led me towards the training center. When I reached the spot, Daniel was in his wolf form. His eyes were pitch black with blue hue surrounding them. He was growling at Vladimir, who was glaring at the wolf. When I entered the scene, Vladimir's eyes met mine coldly before they went back to Daniel. The air smelled like a mixture of blood and dust. Both parties were injured, but no one was going to give up. Daniel pounced on Vladimir, who moved out of the way in the last second. Vladimir is one of the best fighters I know. Daniel doesn't even stand a chance against him. I searched for a certain girl in the crowd. There she stood with her long sandy blonde hair, watching the scene in front of her with cold green eyes. She must have sensed my gaze on her as she finally looked at me. The moment our eyes met, I could feel power bubbling inside me. It was weird. She looked away from me and back to the fighting wolves. Kyle. I called out for the alpha of Blue Moon Pack. He was busy wondering what he should do. When he saw me approaching him, his expressions turned to one of worry. One he shouldn't show me because his mate was still by his side. He had got his mate. Why was he still looking at me like that? Hadn't he accepted her? To my agent extraordinaire, Mylen Noban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Stop, Daniel. I pleaded with him. He watched me with a frown before nodding his head and ordering his wolves to interfere in the fight. Several werewolves shifted and jumped on an uncontrolled Daniel who was growling. Vladimir withdrew himself from the fight. I hurriedly rushed to his side. Vladimir! I cried out and jumped on him. We both fell on the ground with a thud with him underneath me, but he quickly pinned my wrists to the ground, glaring down at me. What's wrong with you, mate? Everyone's watching us, I told him, and he lowered, hiding his head to the crook of my neck. He stayed like that for a few seconds while I was crushing under his weight. He was purposefully shoving his whole weight on me. I pulled my hands from his grip and wrapped my arms around him. It was all for a show. I didn't want the other wolves to know that we were not werewolves. It would create a lot of trouble. I think this is enough. Get off me now, I told him gently while shoving my fingers here. He finally pulled away from me and looked down at me. His face was not as terrific as before, his eyes still were. He rolled over and stood up. It was then I noticed his torn shirt. There were several scratch marks and blood was pouring out of the wound at the sides. He pulled me and scooped me in his arm, taking me by surprise. "Vladimir," I protested, holding on to him. My senses were alert and he carried me. "What are you doing?" "Be quiet," I commanded. I was taken aback by his act. What was he even doing? The fight went on as I had expected. The girl turned out to be who I had expected. But I was surely not expecting this.